Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. I am so excited to have us all here together this evening. We are going to go ahead and get started just in the next minute or so, and I know all of you are settling in and finding your seats. I want to be sure to start out by acknowledging we have two interpreters here in case there are any of you in the audience who may need some translation or interpreting services. To my left is Darwin, who is our ASL interpreter, and to my right is Matt, who is our Spanish interpreter. So he will come on after me and say what I am about to say, but if there are folks in the audience who need some assistance in translating for the Spanish language, we're going to ask you guys to come down to the front right here, and I'll invite Matt to come and say that in Spanish for our folks in the audience.
Buenas tardes. Las personas que necesiten interpretación en español, por favor, se acerquen a las primeras filas aquí para que me puedan escuchar, por favor. Aquí. Se pueden tomar asiento más aquí adelante. ¿Me escuchan? Los que necesiten interpretación, por favor, vénganse a sentar en la primera fila.
Great. Thank you so much, Matt. I'll invite you to come in and take your seat. And then at this point in time, I will invite Dr. Nakia Towns to welcome us to the space. Dr. Towns.
Good evening, good evening. I'm so impressed that we have such a great turnout on what is a rainy and somewhat cold evening as we transition to fall. I really want to make sure we give you a warm welcome and thank you all for joining us tonight. We are really excited about this collaboration between the Tennessee Department of Education and Hamilton County Schools for this town hall. I am so thankful to the department for choosing Hamilton County Schools as one of 8 locations for these public town halls for what is a really critical conversation that we want to have in Tennessee. It's an honor to convene the community and foster dialogue around these topics that are key to the success for all students. We're grateful that you are here to explore with us the public education funding formula, and that we hope that we are working towards a formula that is more tailored to the needs of Tennessee students. It is vitally important to provide schools and districts with the resources needed for every single child to thrive. Every single child. We must exercise our collective influence to ensure the success of our kids and our state, regardless of whether you are a student, parent, community partner, or community member. Thank you for showing up for kids tonight. Thank you for showing up for Hamilton County tonight. Thank you for showing up for Tennessee tonight. Your engagement demonstrates a dedication to student achievement, and it encourages others to become active participants in the transformative power of public education, that transformative power in the lives of our students, families, and communities. I look forward to us having a very productive and respectful conversation. And at this point, I will turn it back over to the Tennessee Department of Education to give a few details for the discussion. Thank you so much for coming. Looking forward to a great dialogue. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Dr. Towns. I will start just by introducing myself. My name is Chelsea Crawford. I'm Chief of Staff at the Tennessee Department of Education. This is actually our 6th town hall of 8 regional town halls. We have yet to be welcomed by a marching band and cheerleaders, and so really enjoyed that. The Howard Heroes. Really enjoyed that, and I think it puts a very, very wonderful perspective on the conversation that we want to have tonight, which is all about what is best for our kids. So as I mentioned, my name is Chelsea. I am going to give us just a little bit of information about how this event will work tonight, and then I'll welcome Commissioner Penny Schwinn to the stage to give us a brief opening remark, and then we actually want to spend the majority of our time tonight hearing from you. We are going to hear from you in terms of public comment. I want to point to the screen over here in front of me. When you all checked in this evening, you had an opportunity to sign up to speak. Everyone who wants to sign up will have a couple of minutes to share some information about what you all would like to see in terms of public education funding for our public school students in the future in the state of Tennessee. It's a very important topic. I know it's near and dear to all of our hearts, and I'm sure that we could spend long hours conversating about this particular topic, but we're going to give everybody a couple of minutes tonight to say what you would like to say about the future. And while the department is very excited to begin working with you all about this opportunity to discuss the state's formula for funding public education, before we begin, the department would like to remind us all of the following. Conversations on this topic are intended to focus on, are not intended to reflect on the current BEP funding formula. The current BEP funding formula will remain in place until a new funding formula is proposed to and approved by the Tennessee General Assembly. The public is encouraged to submit comments in writing to ensure that all communications are thoroughly documented and can be reviewed and considered in the future. Public comment is encouraged to focus on developing a new funding formula rather than revising the current funding formula. Consider what should be funded and at what levels. Subcommittees will be responsible for reviewing public comment and making recommendations for what should be included in a new funding formula. While all committees, subcommittees, and members of the public should feel free to communicate openly, documents and records may be subject to public inspection pursuant to the Tennessee Public Records Act and may be publicly posted or otherwise made available. All recommendations that are submitted by committees and subcommittees will be reviewed and considered, but not all recommendations will ultimately be included in the proposed new funding formula. So I've just said a lot of words for us here tonight. What I really want to emphasize to us is that we are here to talk about the future. What we want to hear from as many of you as we can possibly hear from in the next hour or so is your hopes and dreams and visions for public education funding in the future in our state. So with that, I will invite Commissioner Schwinn up to talk just for a little while to give us a baseline about the conversation that we are going to have tonight. We will then go into public comment. I will begin by calling the name of the person who is going to begin first, and we will bring a microphone to you. We will bring a microphone to the second person, so on and so forth. So with that, Commissioner Schwinn, I'll turn it over to you.
I'm gonna do it this way. I'll do jazz singer style with a little bit of this. So good evening. I'm notoriously clumsy, so we are all very worried that I'm just go off the stage. But it's nice to see you all this evening and to be here talking about something that is so important for our state and for most importantly for our students. So tonight, this is the start of what will be a 3-month conversation, a 3-month process where we are hoping that all Tennesseans, no matter where you live, no matter what zip code, what part of the state, what group you represent, whether you are a parent, a teacher, a community member, a business leader, an elected official, that we are all part of one conversation to build something new and to build a different future for our students. So a little bit about what this is, why now, what we are trying to do here. So school funding, we know, is one of the most important policy decisions that we make as a state. It is how we invest in our students, and it really is the foundation for the outcomes we expect to get for them, which sets them up to be successful in the future. Right now, we have an opportunity to set a legacy for students like never before. We have an opportunity to build something together. All Tennesseans have the chance to participate in the conversation, to contribute, to say what your hopes, your dreams, your expectations, your aspirations are for the students of this state. It is an incredible moment in time. What we are looking to do is move to a student-based funding formula. Now that is different than money follows the kid. Money follows the student is way over here. We are talking about a student-based funding formula. What that means is when we think about how we fund public schools in this state, we start with the child. We figure out what does that student need to be successful? What are the things that we want to ensure are true for our children every day, no matter what? We have heard things across the state from counselors and social workers. We've heard about better and more materials. We have heard about financial literacy. We have heard about different populations who might need different things at different times. This is our opportunity to say that no matter who that student is, we are giving them every opportunity in the world to be successful. I talk a lot about my kids, mostly because I can, and they are 3 very different kids. I'm not going to talk about baby Jack. He's only 2, and we do not know what he is going to be except loving to run into walls, so hopefully that is a job someday, because he's very good at crashing his head into walls. However, my older girls, they are 9 and 6. They could not be more different. They have very, very different needs. They will need different things out of our public schools. We call them salt and pepper for a reason. Ellie's pretty salty, Abby's a little spicy. And Ellie wants to be a dinosaur vet. And we think that's possible. Maybe not now, but in 20 years, you never know, and that's what she wants to be. So we're really encouraging her to go into science. We know she needs hands-on materials. She's watched Jurassic Park a million times. She thinks they all have colds, and she wants to fix that problem. So we want public schools that are going to help her, encourage her to live her dreams, to think about science and inventing and dreaming of what is possible. Abby's more of an artsy type. Like I said, a little spicy. She has other needs and very different needs. What we want to make sure is that both of my girls, just like the 1 million students in this state, are able to take advantage of every opportunity, no matter where they live, whether they are in an urban community or a rural community, whether they come from a family with a lot of money or they don't, regardless of the language they speak, regardless of the abilities or disabilities they may or may not have, regardless of who they want to be or what they want to be. Our public school system is the foundation for all of our students to have a chance, and that chance has got to be equal for every single one of them. All of our kids deserve to have a chance. All of our kids deserve to have opportunities to thrive after they graduate. What we are talking about today is getting your feedback and your contributions about what you want to be true in a public school funding formula. What do you want to make sure is in there? What do you want to make sure is funded? And what does that mean for students? From a process perspective, we have 8 town halls. This is our first week of the kickoff of the conversation. So this is the start of the conversation. We will have Twitter town halls. There is already an email that is open. There are lots of districts, community organizations, and community groups who will have their own town halls. We've received hundreds and hundreds of emails already on this topic. Every single piece of feedback and comment that is submitted to the department through any of these town halls or emails or Twitter town halls or anything else, that will all be coded and given to one of the 18 subcommittees that we've established. Those 18 subcommittees will review that content, they'll solicit additional feedback from their communities, and then they will provide recommendations to the steering committee. The steering committee is made up of elected officials who represent finance chairs or education chairs in the General Assembly, because those are the folks who would ultimately be responsible for shepherding through any potential legislation that may or may not be introduced during session. So these subcommittees and your feedback are what composes those recommendations. I strongly encourage you to dream big and think boldly. This is not the time to be shy. This is not the time to hold back, and I know this crew will not do that here, but really think about what you want to be true for kids. Know that we are reading every single piece of feedback that comes in. Every single comment will go to one of those subcommittees and be considered. Not everybody's going to get everything they want. That is just not how policy works. But what we want to accomplish through this process is one where everyone has a voice, no matter who you are and where you live. All of those voices are included and counted and considered. And at the end of the day, 5 years from now, when we look back at what is true for Tennessee students, we know we are better off, we are achieving higher outcomes, and every single graduate is positioned to thrive as members of their communities, as employees in our wonderful businesses, and most importantly, happy and successful human beings in our state. We've got to move aggressively forward and think boldly and be action-oriented to make that happen. This is a once-in-a-lifetime opportunity for us. It is a time to set a legacy for what will be true moving forward, and I am deeply grateful that all of you are here showing up, participating in the conversation, and dreaming with us. I have a lot of optimism and sense of possibility of what can be, but we just need to make that actually happen for kids. So thank you so much for being here tonight, and I can't wait to hear what y'all have to say. So thanks so much.
Thank you so much, Commissioner Schwinn. It is now time to begin our period of public comment. I will give you one more reminder. If you would like to speak for a couple of minutes this evening, I'll encourage you to sign up on our QR code, which is where you can sign up for a slot to speak. Hey, Scott. we're going to get the computer unlocked so I can read your names and actually invite you all. But while Scott is doing that, I will also share Victoria Robinson is down here. She's got a microphone. Scott will also be running microphones to you. One request, when it is your time to speak, we would just ask that you hold the microphone a little closer to your mouth so that everyone who is in the room or streaming live at home can hear what you have to say. Okay, with that, our first speaker is going to be Jeanette Armarkale. I think I've gotten that name right. Jeanette, if you would please raise your hand. I see you right up front. Yes, ma'am. Following Jeanette will be Laura Hunt. Laura, if you would please raise your hand. You are also up front, ma'am, so we'll bring a microphone to you next. With that, Jeanette, please feel free to go ahead and get started with your 2 minutes.
We're hoping this works. Can you hear me now?
Yes.
I'll use my teacher voice. How's that?
Perfect.
I am very thankful that we're having this conversation and that you were going across the state. This is something that we have been wanting as educators for years. We're good. Okay.
We're going to switch it out there.
Is that oh, there I go.
That is so much better. Please restart and we'll restart the time.
One of the things that we as educators, because I represent educators in Hamilton County, but across the state, across the country as we talk, as we're looking at what's important to us is we need smaller classes. Not classrooms, smaller classes to meet the needs of those students, to really look at the data to see what number of students can you really reach. 40 in a classroom doesn't work well, 36 in a classroom, what really works well, and you have to look at every community and everyone differently. Funding for national standards, based on national standards for the ratio of counselors, social workers, nurses, exceptional ed professionals, whether it's a teacher or a parapro. Arts and enrichment, continue looking at that, continue including and improving our STEM programs. Continue funding and supporting more opportunities besides college track. I know Hamilton County is doing a lot with that. We'd like to see that happening all over our country. Provisions for the diverse cultures that are represented, where we're getting language and interpreters, and we are helping them become citizens that they want to be and helping their families to truly do that, becoming more involved by having community schools, having all the things that we need. And of course, I can't leave out, of course, salaries of all educators at a professional level that is comparable to the national average.
Thank you so much, Jeanette. Appreciate those comments. As I mentioned, next up is Laura Hunt. Following Laura will be Nate Washington. Nate, if you could raise your hand for me and I will find you. Oh, right next door. Okay, go ahead, Laura, with your 2 minutes.
Hi, I'm Laura Hunt with Tennessee Can. We're one of the event sponsors. I've been following Commissioner Swin around to all the different town halls, and this is by far the biggest crowd that we've had, so good job for showing up tonight, Chattanooga. I just wanted to take a couple of minutes and say that we definitely are in support of a student-based funding formula. Specifically, what we are looking to see is more support for special needs and students with disabilities, more support for students with ESL, more support for low-income students, rural students, and the wraparound services that go along with those. So school counselors, nurses, interventionists, RTI specialists, and social workers, just to name a few, are some of the things that we're hoping to see. And then finally, more transparency for parents to be able to know exactly how much the school is spending on their child and the services that they need are being provided. There are flyers on the table outside at the check-in desk that we have if you're interested in learning more about Tennessee Can. And also we're co-sponsoring with my friend Nate here, Tennesseans for Student Success and Tennessee Can are co-sponsoring kind of more of a deep dive of the funding formula and what the student-based funding formula might look like on a call this Monday at noon. So if you're interested in signing up, just either come see me afterwards. I'll have business cards. I'll be down here. You can find me at the back, and I'd be happy to talk more with you about this issue. Thanks.
Thank you so much, Laura. Our next speaker, as I mentioned, is Mr. Nate Washington. Following Nate will be Way Barr. Way, if you would, I see you, ma'am. We'll bring a microphone over to you next. With that, Nate, please go ahead and get started with your 2 minutes.
Okay, I am Nate. Like Laura said, I'm from Tennesseans for Student Success. One of the most important things and one of the reasons that... One of the most important things and one of the reasons why we're here today is that all of you in this room, we don't want this to be the end of your advocacy. As the commissioner said, the legislature is going to be making these decisions. We want to take your voice and get it in front of those folks, whether that's help writing letters to the editor, whether that's help sending out tweets or whatever it may be. I've got some cards up there. I'll be around afterwards. Would love to talk to anybody who wants to talk about this one-on-one. And that's pretty much it.
Thank you so much, Mr. Washington. Our next speaker is Way Barr. Following Way will be Angela Acevedo. Angelica. Oh, I see you back there, ma'am. We'll bring a microphone to you next. With that, Way, please go ahead and get started with your 2 minutes.
All right, good evening. My name is Way Barr. I'm a board member of an organization called National Coalition for Public School Options. And I'm also a parent of 2 students who actually have enrolled in public virtual schools pretty much for the majority of their formative years. So one of them is a rising senior this year, the other is a sophomore. So I'm here to represent the public virtual school community. And thank you, Commissioner Schwinn, to really invite all parents and all students and all stakeholders to be here. So I know that a lot of you probably not have had the opportunity to really get to know virtual school. I know what you're thinking, right? Everybody got virtual school last year or the last 2 years. But what I want to point out is that what my kids have, and a lot of children really around the country, that they've been served by the public virtual schools that are dedicated, intentionally designed programs that are different from the emergency learning that we've had last year and the previous year. So I would like to ask that we continue to support them in your funding strategy, because for some, it works very well. I know that everybody last year who went online said, is this really bad? Virtual school doesn't work, or remote learning doesn't work. But think about it, when the shoe's on the other foot, if you don't expect every student to learn online, how do you expect every student to learn in person? There are some students that virtual school works very well. For my oldest, who's a rising senior, she has done very well. I wish she could be here tonight, but she's actually at Ruby Fall working as a tour guide. But besides that, she's about to graduate as valedictorian of her class, and she maintained a 4.5 GPA. She has a 34 in her ACT. She does very well in school. So it works for some kids, and it can work for a lot more if we give it opportunity, we give it appropriate funding. And I believe that that option is here to stay. So I'd like to encourage you to include that in your funding strategy. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Ms. Barr. Next, we are going to Angelica Acevedo, who is right in the middle in the back. Following Angelica will be Christy Carol Highfill. So Christy, if you would raise your hand, I see you, ma'am. We'll bring a microphone to you next. With that, Angelica, please go ahead and get started with your 2 minutes.
Hi, my name is Angelica Acevedo, but close. And I'm a community organizer here in Chattanooga with an organization called CALEB, Chattanoogan's in Action for Love, Equality, and Benevolence. But prior to the pandemic, I was a mental health educator through an organization based out of Knoxville called the Mental Health Association of East Tennessee, and I traveled to public schools and private schools all over Southeast Tennessee, from the border, the Georgia-Tennessee border, up to Knoxville. And in that year, I had the opportunity to see the best of what Tennessee can do for its students in public school, and not the best. When you come face to face with a 12-year-old telling you that they've survived a suicide attempt the year previous, you know that there are gaps in the support that we can provide our kids. I've been in schools where there are iPads and Surface Pros and touchscreen smart boards, and I've been in schools where I can't give my PowerPoint presentation because their library computer isn't compatible with an HDMI cord. As a community organizer, it's really important for me to highlight that this is a great opportunity that we have here to be involved as a community, to tell the state, to tell the governor what our students need. So, I'm gonna read off a couple of things that a lot of people in Tennessee are asking for in the formula. You asked for specifics, so I'm gonna give them to you. We need a simplified student-weighted funding formula, guided by students' different levels of needs with the goals of eliminating achievement and opportunity gaps. The state must provide clear dollar allocations by assigning additional weights for students from low-income families, English learners, students with disabilities, and rural students. Provide 100 to 200% more funding for students from low-income families than for students from higher income families. Provide 100 to 150% more funding for English learners. Provide additional and tiered funding to support students with disabilities based on their unique needs on the severity of the disability. Target resources to districts and/or schools with particularly large concentrations of students from low-income families, and provide additional funding to students who live in rural districts with clear definitions of rurality. I'm very confident that we can push Tennessee to give the kids the education and support that they need, so thank you.
Angelica, thank you so much. I think I will speak for the commissioner just briefly and say we deeply appreciate the specifics, and so encourage you to submit those in writing. Christy Carol Highfill is our next speaker. She is down here in the front, Victoria. And following Christy is Kevin Sharrick, I think is the last name. Kevin, if you would raise your hand, I see you, sir. We'll bring a microphone over to you here shortly. With that, Christy, please go ahead and get started with your 2 minutes.
Thank you so much. I am a parent of 3 children. One of mine has already graduated from Hamilton County. I have 2 still in public schools. I am also the president of Hamilton County Council of PTAs. Angelica did an amazing job. I hate to follow her, just to be honest with you. I do agree, though, we really do want to see a student, one of the things that I want to see is a student-weighted formula as well, where services are following the student, but the funding is going with the student. We have a lot of cases where students who need specific services are not able to go to their zone school because the funding isn't there to provide those services in every building. And that shouldn't be happening. We need kids able to go to their zoned schools, to stay in their communities, in their neighborhoods, and for that funding to be there for them to receive the services they need. Something else that I would personally really like to see is for more arts funding specifically directed into school systems. School systems shouldn't need to choose between critical services and funding arts. In a time when we really need more social and emotional supports for students, arts is a way of social and emotional support. And when we're being forced to choose between arts education and other critical services, that's a hard choice to make. Those are just a few of the things that we would love to see. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Christy. Victoria, our next speaker is Mr. Kevin Sharrick. He is over here right behind our Kevin and the camera. So Kevin, once you get that microphone, please feel free to go ahead and get started.
Thanks, how's that?
That's great.
Oh, I figured out the mic. My name's Kevin Sharrick. I'm a Hamilton County parent. I have 7 children under the age of 13. Anybody got me beat? Anybody? I think with student-weighted funding, my vote counts the most. That's how this works. And I actually think the premise of this, unfortunately, is deeply flawed. I don't think that funding the system is actually going to help. You know, the wonderful examples here of the diversity of your 2 older girls just demonstrates the huge amount of needs that any educational system, and even a geography as small as Hamilton County, needs to serve. Our educational budget here was over $500 million for 55,000 students. That's not counting the students going to private schools. That's not counting the students who are homeschooled. There's a huge homeschooling community here simply because public schooling has been a failure in Hamilton County for decades. The latest stats are that approximately 1/3 of Hamilton County public students in 3rd grade are proficient at grade level in reading or math or social studies. And while we can all come up with a wish list for Santa to drop on our laps in 5 years, the fact is that if our kids cannot read, we cannot be talking about band and art and athletics, all things that I love. But the fundamental mission of education is to allow our children to provide for themselves, and no one is in a better position to understand the needs of their child than their parent. Funding should go directly to parents to be spent as they see fit for the need of their kids. If those kids fail to launch, who is impacted? Is it the counselor? Is it the public school teacher, of whom my mother was one? No, it's the parents who have that child living in their basement for the next 30 years. You've probably seen the statistics of the number of adults under the age of 35 still living at home. Why? They're not prepared for the 21st century economy. Give parents their funding for their child that they can allocate. to come to this school, to go to a private school, to pay for tutoring, to use online virtual solutions if that's what the parents deem is best. Keep in mind when we talk about educational funding today, these lights are on, a utility bill is educational funding. Mowing the lawn is educational funding. When these discussions happen up in Nashville, we hear all kinds of worries about what parents are going to do with the money as if we have a perfect public school funding system today. But the fact is that if you allow parents to guide that money, a system does not have to cover the huge diversity of needs of 55,000 students. Each parent can find those resources themselves. Some will be a bundled educational solution, like a school that's 8 a.m. to 4 p.m. That would be like going to a restaurant for a meal that's prepared for you. Some will unbundle their educational solutions and say, I want to get math here. I want to learn about Mongolian history here. I want to learn about Spanish here. That would be like going to the grocery store. I buy meat, I buy vegetables. Different solutions for each family's needs and each student's needs. Thank you very much.
Thank you for your comments, Mr. Sharrick. Our next speaker is Molly Anderson. Molly, if you could please raise your hand. Yes, ma'am, I see you right over here. We are bringing a microphone to you, ma'am. Following Molly will be Angela Favalaro. Angela, if you could raise your hand, we'll bring the microphone to you next. With that, please go ahead and get started with your 2 minutes.
Commissioner Switchin, we would like to thank you and the State Department for holding these town halls. As community members, we appreciate the opportunity to provide feedback for the students being served. We would also like to recognize the efforts of the department and the many resources made available for students with disabilities, including Best for All, Tennessee Technical Assistance Network, and Transition Tennessee. As a former student with a disability who has successfully earned a master's degree, I am a product of my education. During my education, my parents and I had the opportunity to work with various individuals who helped me with post-secondary outcomes. My teachers and parents both believed in me and taught me valuable lessons like advocating for myself and others. I want to share a story about advocating. When I was a senior in high school, I got into a wreck and could not call 911. I have been on a mission to get texting 911 all over Tennessee. Yesterday, texting 911 was successfully passed as a policy for the Tennessee Emergency 911 Board because I advocated for it. If I did not have the education that helped me succeed, texting 911 would have not have come to fruition. People with disabilities and people who have children with disabilities need a voice in education. We appreciate there is one subcommittee focused on serving students with disabilities and gifted students, but we would ask for other committees such as the Parent Choice and Voice Subcommittee to include parents of students with disabilities. We would also ask if special education teachers and/or special education supervisors could be included on the higher education and post-secondary readiness, teacher advisory, the school system personnel, school system leadership, rural and small districts subcommittee, and most importantly for self-advocates to participate on the student engagement subcommittee. We would ask to have a voice in these committees as students with disabilities are affected by these topics and may have a different perspective than those without disabilities. Thank you for your time.
Thank you so much, Ms. Anderson. Our next speaker is Angela Favalaro. She is in the back there, Scott, kind of in the middle of the row. Following Angela, I know I'm going to get this name wrong and I apologize. It's Mr. Moorhead, Sabria Moorhead. Do I see Sabria Moorhead? Oh, yes, ma'am, I see you back there. We'll bring a microphone to you. Next up, Angela, please go ahead and get started with your 2 minutes.
Hi, I'm Angela Favalaro. I'm a parent advocate with a group, Moms for Social Justice, that we focus on literacy gaps and helping fund inclusive literature and stuff where we know the state funding leaves some of those holes. A few things that I know we want to focus on are increased level of funding allocated through the state formula, both overall and to student groups most in need, in order to support a rigorous, high-quality education and that program for all students. Tennessee makes lower than average effort to fund schools based on the state's ability to support education. Moving forward, we recommend the state invest a similar amount as the national average GDP on a per student basis, making future funding predictable for planning for districts. Fairness in all allocations by addressing local districts' ability to pay and providing appropriate funding to districts with low property wealth. This will help make up the difference between what a district needs and what is reasonably able to contribute based on their ability to raise local revenue. A robust state and local data system to ensure that dollars are used well while providing enough flexibility to allow districts to respond to their local needs and context. Also, just being able to do that whole child learning and equitably by keeping that within the public education system. We do have wonderful public schools who can stretch these dollars much farther than I know I can as a parent. While I definitely want to be involved in that process, I know that I trust these experts in these fields to be paid a professional wage and make those excellent decisions for our children.
Thank you, Ms. Favalaro. Next up is Suhir Jahan, Sabria Moorhead. I hope I've gotten that pronunciation correct.
That was remarkably close.
Okay, I did good. All right, thank you, ma'am. Please go ahead and get started with your 2 minutes.
My name is Suhir Jahan, Sabria Moorhead. I am a parent in Hamilton County. I've had kids at any number of schools. And in terms of this student-based funding, which I do support, I think as much as I think that I'm a wonderful parent, I don't think that we should just give the money directly to me because, quite frankly, being a great parent is a lottery. My children could have had a terrible parent, who knows? But what I want to advocate for right now are 2 specific issues. One is related to English as a second language. I really feel like we need to focus on the funding related to students of that nature and not just teaching them English. As much as every effort I've done to improve my daughter's English or to help her in that regard, at the same time, I still need her to learn. And I feel like the focus in a lot of the education that we're having, sure, it's great to teach her English, and her English is improving rapidly, but at the same time, she still needs to be learning. She still needs to learn math, she still needs to learn science, she still needs to learn everything. And so I don't want us to just look at, let's teach them some English and that's enough, while they're falling farther and farther behind. And even when they're not falling behind, and this is just a pet peeve of mine of something I've discovered recently, you can do everything, you can get your child to a 3.5 GPA, and then if it turns out that they're undocumented, by the time they graduate, they're not eligible for in-state tuition. So the state of Tennessee has spent all of this money educating her, teaching her English, improving her, and trying to make her a productive citizen, and then if she wants to go a little bit further, they say, no, you need to wait. I don't think that really makes sense. I don't even think it's economical. We've spent the money to educate her. We should keep spending the money so she can complete that education. Anyway, those are just my 2 thoughts.
Thank you. Thank you so much, ma'am, for your comments. Next up is Ms. Cheryl Bryant. Cheryl, if you could, I see you here. Scott is bringing a microphone down to you. Following Cheryl is Chris Fickley. Chris, if you would raise your hand. Chris Fickley. Oh, I see you. Okay, we will come to you next. All right, with that, please go ahead and get started with your 2 minutes.
Yes, thank you for opening the floor to us today. I am a G-mom in the system. My children have graduated. But like I've told every principal here, every child in this building belongs to me. So I will speak up for them. These are just concerns that I have. If I can take this down. These are just concerns that I have and things that I've noticed throughout the years. First of all, to address the band issue, band doesn't only teach music. Band teaches math, band teaches science, band teaches history, and a lot of other things. A lot of people don't know what 3-4 and 4-4 is, so you have to know some sense of math to be able to accomplish the things that they've accomplished. Next, a concern that I have and that I've noticed, and please don't take this the wrong way by any means. Students that are displaced, we here get a lot of the students. And my question is, how is that they can register in school all the way through April or May, and school ends in May? That affects our graduation rates, that affects our attendance, that also affects our grades, because they're not here long enough to get the education they need to make the grades we need to be where we should be. Another concern I've noticed is our core curriculum here in Hamilton County is not the same across the board. And I say that because I experienced it with my children when they were in school. We started out at one school, but because we moved, we had to change to another school. And they were so far ahead of the students in the school we went to in the core curriculum, and that shouldn't be the case. Everything in our core curriculum should be taught across the board. And I understand we have the magnet schools that specialize in certain fields. I get that, but our core curriculum, our math, our science, our social science, all of that should be the same across the board. And they should be able to move from school to school and not be behind or so far ahead that either way it hurts the child. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Ms. Bryant. Appreciate those comments. Our next speaker is Mr. Chris Fickley. Following Chris is Pascali Hogg. Pascali Hogg. Oh, yes, ma'am. We'll bring the microphone to you next. Chris, please go ahead and get started with your 2 minutes.
Hey, thank you very much. Whoa. That's a little hot for this mic. I'm sorry about that. Hey, everybody. My name is Chris Fickley. I am a proud teacher here at the Howard School. I'd like to say a few things that may have been brought up and some things that may not have. As you know, we are in the middle of probably one of the most trying times in education. I've been in this for 20 years. I've never seen anything that's happened in the last 2 years. I hope I never do again. I see kids who struggle. I see kids, I work with special needs populations. I see kids who need. I work with kids whose parents have passed away from COVID, who struggle with mental health, who struggle every day. And we spend a lot of time talking about nickels and dimes. We're talking about funding for students and changing to per pupils funding, which is fantastic. That's great. When our per pupil funding compared to the rest of the nation is 49th, we're still talking about nickels and dimes. We need to talk about a little bit more. Kids can't relate to you unless you relate to them. We hear that all the time, right? What are we seeking? Are we seeking increases in reading scores? Of course we are. But we're also looking at kids who struggle on Maslow's hierarchy of needs, who worry about where they eat or they live, or if they've ever had a pair of shoes bought for them, which we did this year. There's a lot of reflections that need to happen in this state, in this town. We sit at this school, we work as hard or harder than anybody else. There's another school that has a foundation set up for it that takes in an extra $1 million for those students. And that's fantastic. The community that we serve needs to have the same ability to be served at the same levels, no matter if the parents are being, or the money in the town is able to give them extra money or not. Nickels and dimes. Let's talk about dollars and cents, and the sense that we can make and that these kids can make, and the growth that they can make, because they're wanted, they're loved. And then, only then, are we able to make the differences that we want to. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Fickley. Thank you very much. Our next speaker is down here with the white sweater, Scott. Yes, this is Pascali Hogg. Our next speaker is Jay Dykes. Jay, if you would raise your hand. I see you, sir. We'll bring the microphone to you next. Please go ahead and get started with your 2 minutes.
Hi, my name is Pascal Hogg. I'm also an educator here at the Howard School, so nice to see something else. So there's 2 things on my mind that I'd like to share. I think I'm going to echo a lot of the sentiments that were passed today in our meeting. there's a difference between equality and equity. And I have this conversation with my students a lot. When I have pencils in my room, I don't give every kid a pencil because every kid doesn't need a pencil. But I give the students that don't have one a pencil because they obviously need one. And so I think I'm in big favor of redistributing how much funding we give to students based upon where they live, because some students have greater need than others. I grew up and my mom was deaf on food stamps, and I had a little bit more need. I didn't come to school with folders and pencils and cute little Lisa Frank binders. I needed more than other kids did. And I made it out with a 4.0 GPA, got a scholarship to go to college, but I had all of that because people gave me more, and they recognized that needed me. The second thing I'm going to address is for all my educators in the room, and that is the issue of teacher pay. I don't know if you guys have any influence in this. So our salary is posted and it's public on the internet, and so our salary schedule increases by about like $500 to $700 per year. I just want to let everybody know that the cost of living increased 5.9% in the year of 2021, and that is way less. Our increase is way less than the 5.9% suggested increase. So those are my two things. Thanks.
Thank you so much. Scott, we are coming down here to Mr. Jay Dykes. Following Jay will be Jordan Simon. Jordan, if you would raise your hand, please. I see you. Yes, sir. We'll bring the mic back to you. With that, Jay, please go ahead and get started.
All right. I'm a teacher. I've taught in 3 different locations in the state because my wife has moved with her doctorate degree, prior military, and I have 5 kids and 9 grandbabies. 7 of them are in school right now in this state. I have a problem with, my first one would be teacher assistants. Most of our teacher assistants actually have degrees, and a good bunch of them are teachers that can't get picked up yet. So now they're working for pennies on the dollar, and they have a master's degree. I'm talking from experience because I used to work as a teacher assistant waiting to get picked up. So I went from teaching with my double master's degree to dirt salary pay to teaching again. These are your teachers that are waiting for someone to die, move, escape, I don't know, just get out of the teaching field. But they're getting paid nothing. And they're not even getting paid for the degree. They're paid a set salary and that's it. And most of them have degrees. And we're not paying them. We're not paying our regular teachers. When I was in Cleveland, just up the street, a way better money school than this one, and the kids have way more stuff than these kids. Their teacher assistants are getting the same thing. But there's teachers I've seen there literally graduate from Lee, still living at home because they can't afford to be an adult, even though they're teaching. She said the cost of living went up. She's right. You know, we got another problem. We got sports. Back in the 80s and 90s when I graduated, we used to just get by because somebody else did your homework or they passed you. We're still doing that in middle school. There is no requirement to check like we do for high school. So we're teaching them already in middle school, oh, it's okay if you're a jock because we're just going to pass you up. I've seen it. It's happening in this state. Our reading level is terrible. I graduated someone at Southwind High School in Memphis to go to Alabama because he played football. He couldn't even spell his own name. That's sad. There's kids I'm teaching right now who have 4th grade reading level. I have to, for lack of a better word, dumb it down so they can read the paperwork that they're supposed to be reading as 11th graders. Oh, crap. I'm sorry. There's gaps in the school, in like the whole state. For instance, there's end of the year tests that we're supposed to be taking. Again, from Memphis to here, I've seen it twice, where there's ways to get around the testing so my scores look good for end of year testing. That's not right. So I can not take the English test or the history test or something because there's a way around it. We need to close those gaps. If we're saying we want the kids to graduate, then I don't want to graduate that kid going to Alabama who can't play football after the first year because he gets hurt, and now he can't do nothing, and he's back in mom's basement. I don't want that, and none of us want that. And throwing money at the problem ain't right. We need to look at the problems. You need to actually ask people that are in the trenches. 22 years in the military, special forces, let me tell you, if you want to know what's going on, you got to ask someone who's down there digging the ditch. My grandpa used to say, if you want to be something, ask someone who does it. I want to be a firefighter, I'm going to ask a firefighter how to get there. We're not doing that. Most of our teachers have degrees, multiple degrees. They can help the kid get to college. They can tell them there's better ways. They can show them things. But the other half of that equation is letting them see that it's possible. And right now, when I went from Southwind in Memphis to Cleveland to Summit at Polk County to here, the schools are not the same. Someone said it's different in the same school district. It's different across the board. There's great teacher things out there, and there's great programs out there. We're not using them all. History has way too many things that's got to be covered in a history class from the beginning to the end of a year. And that's if you take the class for a year. Now everybody's blocking everything and trying to cram it into a thing. Maybe we need to chop up some things and make them easier. Maybe we need to do a history of Tennessee. Cut some of those, pull them out of history. Now we're teaching less, and we can actually get the kids to learn something. There's probably other things. I don't teach English. My last thing is SPED. I spent the last 4 years in SPED. She's right. The other two that talked about SPED is right. I used to hear really well. I got hurt in combat. I fell out of a helicopter. Technically, it's a training mission, so if you're recording this, it's training. 3 stories. That's at least 36 feet. I have a bad back. I don't hear. I have a service dog. You know what kind of trouble I went through to get hired in this county? It's ridiculous. That's all I got to say.
Thank you for your comments, sir. We are moving now to Jordan Smith. Scott, he's right here. He's got a blue jacket on, blue-gray jacket. Jordan Smith. Following Jordan Smith is Dr. Leandria Ware. So Dr. Ware, if you would raise your hand, please. Way back there, I see you. Okay, we'll come to you next, ma'am. Jordan, please go ahead and get started with your 2 minutes.
Hi, everybody. My name is Jordan Simon, and I'm a local teacher at China Academy, just next to the airport. And my only ask is that by 2026, we could move from spending $10,000 per student to $15,000 per student.
Thank you so much for your comments. We are going now to Dr. Leandria Ware.
Absolutely. Thank you so very much. I am Dr. Leandria Ware, proud principal here at the Howard School. Give it up. Awesome, awesome, awesome. Thank you all so much for being here, and thank you, Commissioner Schwinn, for the opportunity to speak about student-based funding. I simply want to re-emphasize some of what's already been mentioned this evening. Here at Howard School, we work really hard to make sure we embrace every single student who has the privilege to walk through our doors every single day. Just this year alone, we have received 147 newcomers to Howard High School. Newcomers are our students, mostly from Guatemala. They speak very limited English or no English at all, and they've been out of formal education setting for about 4 years on average. But again, we work really hard to make sure that we support every single student, not only provide that language acquisition for our students, but give them the foundation to, as Mom said, be successful in those required courses so when they leave us, they are college or career ready. Of those 147 students, 56 of them are 17 years or older. A lot of our students come to us and they are the financial provider for that household. And so with a student-based funding, it's really going to help us and support us to get to the core of how do we come up with non-traditional, customized ways to make sure that every student can leave here and be a productive citizen in society. Thank you for being here tonight. We so appreciate this opportunity.
Thank you so much, Dr. Ware. And you actually closed us out for this evening. You were our last public commenter, so I appreciate everyone who had an opportunity to share. At this point in time, I'm going to invite the commissioner to come on the mic. Before she does, I want to make one more shameless plug for us. A lot of you all had comments this evening. A lot of you had papers that you handed to us. Really, really, really encourage you to hand those papers to us or to send us an email at this email address. The commissioner mentioned that all of the emails that we see are going to go to subcommittees for review and consideration. So please take a snapshot, send us an email, and let us know what you think. Commissioner, I'll turn it over to you.
Thank you. I was telling the team, I'm going to do it, so apologies in advance. This is a really important conversation, and so I want to make sure, is there any last comment or question? They love when I open it up for questions because it's a dealer's choice on that one, but any last comments or questions? Want to make sure anyone who wants to be heard can be heard. I've got 1, 2, 3, 4.
Number of questions. We'll go to Angelica first.
Great.
I saw her hand with the green jacket. Commissioner, I'm actually going to give you my microphone so that we can share back here.
Part of my reach.
Cool. I'm back. I was wondering, sorry, I lost my question here. So the subcommittees that are being held, will there be a way for us, in our towns to be able to see what's going on in the subcommittees or get reports released? Will there be live stream of these subcommittees? What's the transparency going to be?
Absolutely. Can you hear me? Yep, absolutely. So all subcommittee meetings will be available online. So either live stream, they will also be available for, if you can't be live, you will be able to watch them online. Also, every single public document that is submitted, as Chelsea said earlier, is available for public inspection. So those are also all publicly available. The only thing we will redact, of course, is if someone uses a student's name, we would want to make sure to ensure that child's privacy, but everything will be publicly available.
Hi, thank you. I guess I could touch on the transparency piece that she was talking about. Once implemented, how will the state ensure that the new funding formula is transparent and accessible to all stakeholders?
Yeah, great question. So part of a student-based funding formula, and again, there are some also federal requirements that link into this, is that all of that will be publicly available. So you as a parent, any parent would be able to see, this is how much funding comes from the state to educate my child. You will be able to actually see that. We are now federally required to report on how much individual schools are funded within states. They gave a little bit of additional time for that as a result of the pandemic, but starting this year, we are supposed to report very accurate, transparent data on funding by school as part of the federal law. We are able to do that in a much more accurate way with a student-based funding formula. You will be able to know how much school A versus school B versus school C receives, and also what your child receives. And so both of those are part of, I think, the benefits of student-based funding. It's also part of the federal requirements that Tennessee will be meeting starting this year.
Other questions? Please go ahead and raise your hand.
Just really quickly, I know you said that this was like a 3-month-long process, I think, of the town halls. When can we expect to see like the finished comprehensive proposal that you guys have for us?
Yeah, great question. So part of the commitment that Governor Lee made was to do a 3-month process where no matter where you live, we're going to find a way. We know a lot of people prefer social media and emailing. It's hard to speak up in front of a big group, and so appreciate those who had the courage to do that. Everyone will have a chance to contribute. We'll be doing town halls and lots of other more local events. At the end of 3 months, so that's the end of January, we're going to see where we are. And so that is elected officials, public officials, school districts, parents, community members. Are we at a place where there is something that we may or may not want to propose into legislation? The General Assembly would need to propose and consider, but we will see where we are in January. Genuinely, and I know this, we've gotten this question a lot, especially from our district leadership, there is not a formula that is already built sitting in a closet somewhere. This is actually something we are building in real time. This is something that we want to make sure that we have all sorts of public comment, that we're able to build this together. And it's over the next 3 months, we'll see how far we get, and hopefully we are in a place where we can actually move with action. I think that is really important on behalf of our kids. Great question.
My phone's back on, so I can answer my last thing is, again, 3 schools, and I've seen 2 of them where a 0 equals something. So a kid does no work, and all of a sudden he gets a 0, should have a 0, but he gets a 59 or 69. That's how you get that kid that was at Southwind who goes to college, because he does like 2 assignments and now he's got a 70. So what's your take on that?
Yeah, so I think that really comes down to local grading policies. So the school funding formula, any kind of revision there won't address local grading policies, and I think a lot of issues that impact education that we all want to talk about. So this will just be about the funding that is resourced to that particular child in order to ensure that every single child, by the time they're graduating from high school, is on grade level and ready to thrive after they graduate. So it's not going to address that specific question. Those are all going to be local grading policies and will remain local grading policies. That wouldn't be standardized across the state.
Hi, I'm Rhonda Jett with the Tennessee Education Association. I've noticed on your roster of subcommittees that you have some very important people that are chairing those committees. But do you have anything that is predominantly made up of teachers and teachers' aides, or are you planning focus groups that will incorporate the ideas for the funding mechanism for the individuals who are actually in the trenches and have the boots on the ground?
Yes, ma'am. So we have a subcommittee that is just of teachers. So we have a teacher subcommittee. We also have a representative from TEA on one of the committees as well.
Another question right there.
Hello, everybody. Oh, my bad. Alex Coker, I teach chorus here at the Howard School. So when we talk about the funding model, setting our students up for success prior or following graduation, I still feel like at some point, just because the history of being a music teacher, the art, it's at the expense of the fine arts. So I just want to know, in this funding model, as we are all consumers of arts, okay, why do we still not consider it a viable career path for our students? And not only that, it teaches math, history, science, but it also teaches language, and that's something that I feel like needs to be stressed even more, especially in the environment that we're working in. So that's what I don't know.
So I'm going to take the comment, but I also want to just say specific to art and music and things like that. Here's the difference between what we have in a resource-based funding model and a student-based funding model. That is without agnostic to whatever funding model that is, just for the record, just generically. In a student-based funding model, every child is resourced with their needs. However, it does allow for a lot of flexibility within the district to be able to decide and figure out where those investments need to take place to maximize the opportunities available to all students. So if there was a large contingent of students or a district wanted to provide more music or art, double block of literacy, double block of math, whatever that might be, we are able to think about the outcomes we want for kids, and then districts are able to have that level of flexibility to strategically invest based on the communities they serve. So hopefully that addresses a little bit of your comment, and appreciate that. Thank you, sir.
Hey, I'm Jose Otero, sorry. I work here at the Howard School as well. We invited a lot of our Hispanic families here tonight. So I kind of wanted to open up some questions, if they had any questions that I can interpret for you. And maybe if maybe I can help facilitate those questions, but we do have a lot of those families here. So I'm gonna ask them right now if they have any questions. Is that cool?
Please do.
Ok. Queremos saber si ustedes tienen alguna pregunta para saber algo sobre la educación o lo que está pasando aquí en el estado de Tennessee sobre lo que es las escuelas aquí en Chattanooga y aquí en la escuela de Howard. Por favor, si tienen una pregunta, yo lo puedo interpretar o tenemos aquí el traductor también. Right here we have a lady right here.
No speak English. Al final no quiere hacer una pregunta. No, nomás quiero hablar yo con él. José. Es que necesito, no le entiendo lo que ellos dicen. Oh, es que necesito para que nos explique. No, es que yo necesito para que le explique de qué están hablando porque no entiendo inglés. Interpretador, ajá.
She just said she needs an interpreter. She doesn't understand.
She had a comment. Okay, fine. She had a comment she wanted to say and talk to you.
Okay, ¿usted vino principalmente con una pregunta que tenía en mente o algo sobre las escuelas? Okay. No, she was just saying that she didn't know that there was an interpreter over there, but she would have gone over there, but she didn't know. Anyone else? ¿Alguien más tiene una pregunta? Por favor, digan algo, yo lo interpreto. Cualquier cosa, los niños o los adultos, si tienen una pregunta, estamos aquí para servirles. Ahora es el tiempo. Señor. He's raising his hand right here.
Todo lo que están hablando, no entendemos de lo que se está hablando. Como dijo ella, pues solamente lo que están hablando en inglés. Entonces necesitaremos a alguien, por ejemplo, cuando terminen de hablar, que alguien explique en español para que así todos entendemos lo que están hablando sobre lo que es.
He said that he'd like to have a summary of what was going on, to be more specific, a summary of what's been happening, so that they can feel so they can be have knowledge to know what questions to ask according to what's being said here.
Yeah, that's a great point. So one of the things that we will be doing is every FAQ and document that we put out will be translated into both English and into Spanish. It does. So that's, I mean, this gentleman here has been sitting with them the whole time. Yep. Yes, ma'am. All of those materials will be posted on our website. So once we start posting those materials after this first week of town halls, we have a dedicated web page, and any FAQ or document will be on there, and you'll see the English version and the Spanish version. Yes, ma'am. Other questions? Questions, comments? Yes, ma'am?
My question, I have two girls. They're on totally different ends of the world. I have one who's walking the line of gifted, and I have one who is visually impaired and has a significant cognitive disability. I would like for both of my girls to have the opportunity to work post-high school. I have that expectation for both. And I wonder how a formula, and there's going to be I'm sure some feedback here, but how the formula is going to gauge, because I feel like they're going to need different supports as they go through school. Like my one who is getting closer to graduation is going to need more support for like work and communication devices and that sort of thing. My younger one is going to need some to be challenged. She's going to need to up it a little bit. So how does that work when the need changes as the student grows?
Yeah, that's a great question. I'm actually going to connect that back to a comment that was made earlier and use this as an example of how a student-based funding formula can work as an example. And so you have two girls, and so one of those, let's say you have your base, every student gets a certain base, and we've been talking a lot about weights. That's the additional funding that is added to what that student generates for their unique and individual needs. So we've heard a lot over the town halls. You might have a weight assigned to a child who is gifted. You might have a weight assigned for CTE pathways as students are in high school and you want them to have more opportunities in work-based learning or additional career opportunities. You also, and I think we've heard a lot, and I will say students with disabilities has been a significant theme in every single town hall, multiple comments and representation, that we need to think about the amount of different weights depending on the needs of individual students. You might have a child who has a disability like speech and language that is short-term. Maybe it is not as significant as a child who has a much more significant and needs more resources-based disability. You would want to make sure that those weights accommodate the needs of those students and that that's going to change as the students' needs change over time. And that's where I think we have a much more responsive opportunity. So as kids grow and change, as we know they do, we have a funding formula that really meets them where they're at and ensures they get what they need. Yes, ma'am.
Yes. This gentleman here is a parent of one of our students at Howard School, and he says that he greatly appreciates the opportunity for the students to have a high school education. He's very grateful for that. But he's saying, where do they go after that? What's the next step for his child? He knows that, the immigration situation, the paper situation, the DACA, all that, but he's looking to see how is Tennessee going to step up to help our immigrant students that have 4.0 GPAs, that are graduating, that are showing that they're willing to have the grit and the capacity to go on? What is the state of Tennessee going to do to help those students?
So I'm going to give two answers there. So I think that the first answer is about what we can do in the pre-K and 12 system to ensure that every single student, by the time they graduate, is able to be successful in whatever pathway they take after graduation. So that's going to include more work-based learning. That's going to include more access to course selection. That needs to include more access to a large diversity of courses, no matter where you live. That is the first part of what a funding formula adjustment can do. We can certainly provide additional funds or different allocations of funds for high school students. What we hear a lot about especially is that not every student can get in a car, get on a bus and go to a work site and be able to participate in work-based learning. It's actually quite expensive, and transportation is one of the biggest barriers that our children have to accessing opportunity. So how do we think differently about giving all students opportunities no matter where they live? The second part of the conversation, I think, is a much broader policy conversation that isn't necessarily tied to a school funding formula, but I want to acknowledge that you made that comment, and we are going to make sure that everything is codified. Even if it's not about a formula, we are going to make sure that our elected officials get every single comment and are able to consider that, whether it's for the formula or not. If people are speaking up and providing feedback, we feel very strongly that we want to make sure that that is codified and provided to those who might be in a position to make some policy changes. So appreciate both of those comments, sir. Thank you very much.
He also says that he understands about the preparing like Future Ready or CTE or something like that. He says that he wants his son to be better than who he is. He works construction now. He doesn't want his son to graduate 12th grade and end up working, laying tile or doing roofing. And he says that, he really hopes that his son can be able to reach the dreams and go above and have that college education. We have another question here.
Sir, in the back, are you good? Are you sure? Okay.
Yo sé que están hablando de mucha educación para nuestros hijos, fondo y todo, y que hay de la seguridad. ¿Ellos están haciendo algo al respecto? Porque sabemos que pasó aquí hace como 3 meses. Alguien trajo un arma. Habrá algo como detector de metales, porque queremos el éxito, pero que hay de la seguridad también.
The dad asked a question about school safety and security. His thing is that he wants to make sure that wherever they go to school, wherever his child goes to school, that they're safe and they're sound and that they have the opportunity to come to school and not be afraid. So a lot of he's talking predominantly, in any school in Tennessee, for example. What is the state doing to make sure that the security in schools is where it needs to be?
So I'm gonna link that back to some of the funding formula. So some things that we have heard in the comments we've received so far is about school safety and security. What that looks like on different campuses is going to be a local decision. What I'm hearing though is that one of the things we want to make sure to fund is a resource to allow for every district and every school to make decisions on how they fund secure and safe schools and what that looks like. I know sometimes that's facilities, sometimes that's personnel, sometimes that is resources that are preventative and supportive resources. I'm hearing that the comment is, how do we make sure that we have enough money or that we have resources that allow for every child to be safe every single day? I want to say separately as a parent, the most important thing when we drop our babies off is we get them back at the end of the day, and so I deeply appreciate that comment. So thank you very much.
Thank you for your time. My name is Roddy Coe. I have a high school freshman who is autistic. That's my most important title. I'm also a governor-appointed member of the Council on Developmental Disabilities and Council on Autism Spectrum Disorders. We've heard how teachers need support. We've heard how teachers need the resources, but in my discussions also with teachers, we're not accounting for their training so that they know how to work with our students with disabilities beyond what they receive in school. Of course, asking them for more time requires more funds for them as well as for this training. But as we've heard from all around, this training will not just benefit the students directly with disability, but as we're including more of these students in our classrooms under FAPE and LRE, this will help every student. And so how is that going to be included in this funding formula?
So I appreciate that, and thank you for your service on that committee. It's making a big difference, and I appreciate that. One of the things that we can do, and what I'm going to take away from that comment, so correct me if you'd like me to take away something different, is we need to think about how we provide differentiated professional development for teachers in different stages of their career, where they're not having to pay to go back to school to get development in order to support the needs of their students, especially as those students may change and evolve over time. 99% of our teachers have at least one child with a disability in their classroom. 99% of about 85,000 teachers across our state. We also know that as we get stronger and better over our careers, in whatever that career is, we're interested in diving down into some of those additional topics and really getting additional expertise. So I think that what I'm hearing from you is support and resources so that all of our teachers can get access to additional professional development, especially in these core areas like serving our children with disabilities. So I appreciate that very much. Thank you, sir.
My question is, once the funds have been allocated, what checks and balances do you all have in place to ensure those funds are going where they should be and that they're not rerouted to something else? If the funds are available for education, to make sure they're not going towards central office for a secretary to get a secretary to be paid. What's your checks and balance to ensure that that's going where it should be?
Yes, it's a good question, and it's one about accountability. And so for any kind of funding formula, and I'll use this as an example in student-based, it does tell you how much a student generates. It does allow you to know how much that particular school generates. Now, some of those dollars are going to go to district offices to support district office functions. What the transparency part of that is, so all of that, again, parents will know how much their student is funded. That by law has to be reported annually in terms of how much money was generated at the school. Then there's an accountability function of here's how much my school generated, here's how much was spent at my school. And then that's part of that local conversation where parents and community members are now informed, and district officials have the opportunity to describe and explain and talk about what they are producing and providing to different schools and students and communities in a way that is rooted in data, transparency, and a reflection of strategic allocation resources and investments. So I appreciate that question.
We have a question down here.
Yes, sir. Final call. I think we've got one here.
We've discussed a considerable number of ideas which may call for considerable additions to the educational budget. Does the General Assembly foresee an increase in funding being considered with this spending plan? And if so, what are the proposed sources?
So I will say definitively, and I'm bold, underlined, italicized, I will and would never speak for the General Assembly. What I will, I think that is the right answer. Is that the right answer, sir? Yes, sir. So one of the things I can say is that we want to make sure that after all of the community engagement, we are providing the options. And that's going to be bucketed into, this is what must be in a formula. This is what really should be in a formula. This is a nice to have. And this is a hopes and dreams maybe someday, but probably not right now. The General Assembly will have a proposal if we get to that point by January, and they'll be able to consider what, if how much they might want to put towards public education. But those will be decisions that they will make. What this process will do is provide that list of recommendations and candidly cost out those recommendations so they can make informed decisions if they choose to take that up.
Hi, so it sounds like you guys are currently gathering data from all the communities on how to construct the equation that we're going to be using for that student-based formula. My question is, do you guys have a specific plan in place on how you're going to be gathering the data that's going to inform that equation? Where can we also see that data and how you're going to gather it?
Yeah, so the question was, how are you going to see essentially the data that goes into how much a resource costs? Is that, okay, great. So there's 3 different ways that we're doing that, so we have some checks and balances. So the first way we're doing that is through subcommittees. If they have a recommendation, we're costing that, and that has to be cited with whether that's research, labor statistics, et cetera. The second is we will have a panel of experts. Those are both state and national experts on school finance who will be able to provide an array of, here's what the national average is, here's what it is in Tennessee, here's how that differs between rural versus urban versus suburban. So a list of experts will be providing that. And then the third way is we are actually asking our districts to provide their real-time costs and expenses. So for example, if we take a state average, that doesn't necessarily account for certain areas of our state that are more expensive for let's say teacher salaries, or it might be a little bit less expensive for transportation, but you get to a rural community and it gets real pricey real quick. So we are going to ask our districts to say, what are your real costs right now? Match that against what our national expenses look like, and then match that against, of course, what the subcommittees generate. All of that will be provided through the public information on our website. So you'll be able to see what all of those different amounts are, what is finally going into the recommendation, and then certainly, again, be able to provide additional feedback. All right. Yes, sir.
If they didn't want to talk out loud, then I can talk and I can send the email in. Si usted tiene cualquier pregunta o algún comentario que no lo quieren decir, me pueden decir a mí personalmente y yo envío el correo electrónico al gobierno, básicamente sobre qué están usando el estado de Tennessee, el dinero que están usando, para qué quieren que utilicen el dinero y para qué están utilizando el dinero para los muchachos. Entonces, si tienen alguna pregunta, cualquier cosa, yo se lo puedo mandar en el correo electrónico. Y también al salir, por favor, con la señorita Jessica Raimundo, para los que firmaron para recibir su tarjeta de regalo por estar aquí. Muchas gracias.
Ladies and gentlemen, can you hear me? Can you hear me? All right. Brothers and sisters, firstly, let us give our Commissioner of Education and her staff a great hand. I have never been in a hearing of this nature where the question period may have already been over, but it was extended. They want to know what the interests and concerns are. You have expressed them this evening. Oh, by the way, some of you may not know who I am. I'm State Representative Yusuf Hakeem. I represent this community, okay? And let me say, you are to be commended. You turned out. You said what needed to be said to the administration, to the commissioner and her staff. Governor Lee has to be commended for what is happening with education. Ladies and gentlemen, if we don't do anything now with education, I don't know if we'll ever do it. When I look at the fact that the state of Tennessee has one of the best, if not the best, bond ratings in the nation, has over $1.5 billion in the rainy day fund. Federal government has put forth billions of dollars to go toward education. And I believe what is happening, the commissioner and her staff will report to the governor that there is a true interest on your part to improve our community. You are the best. Let me ask you to please give yourselves a hand. And for those of you who may not know, Mr. Herman Prater over here, one of the photographers, and myself, we are graduates of the Howard School. But truly, I don't believe the commissioner and her staff will come into an environment across the state any more energized, any more wanting to see something done and completed. You have expressed it, and that is so meaningful. So we're looking forward at the state level. I get back to Nashville, I've got something to tell my colleagues. If people want something done, we're tired of coming forward, of expressing ourselves and nothing happened. As I said, this is prior to Governor Lee, because so much has been proposed and put forward, hasn't been followed through on. But I believe all the elements have come together. This is the timing for things to be done. So with that, we're looking forward to great things happening for our children and our teachers and our communities going forward. Commissioner, once again, thank you so very much.
Well, I don't want to follow that, but I was like, well, I'm gonna just take the win and go. I do want to say thank you very much for being here. I think as we've heard tonight, there's a lot of energy around this topic. I know we have been talking about it and talking about it and talking about it. We do have this moment in time. We genuinely have this moment in time to do something about it, to think very critically about what could be possible for every single student, regardless of where that child lives, to ensure every child has access to a high-quality education and the resources necessary to thrive after graduation. As you have more feedback, I hope this is not the first time you engage. I hope you engage a lot over the next 3 months. Join a Twitter town hall, send an email, have your own community organizations conduct town halls and send that feedback in. I've said it before, I'll say it again, and my team knows it's true. I will read every single thing that comes into the office. It matters that much. These are billions of dollars that are going to public education, billions of dollars. There's a lot on the line for kids, and if we deeply believe that every child has the potential to be successful, whatever that looks like for that child after they graduate, we have to take this seriously, and every single opinion, whether we agree or not, is going to be included in an inclusive process. We are not all going to agree, and not every single thing is going to be considered in the way that will end up in a potential proposal. But it will be read, it will be discussed, and at the end of the day, I deeply believe we will get to an end product that is going to put our state on a trajectory to ensure every child can be successful, and I'm very, very grateful for you to contribute tonight. Please continue to provide your feedback over the next 3 months, and I look forward to what's ahead. I have a lot of sense of possibility and optimism about what we can do for kids in the state of Tennessee, so thank you very much. Really appreciate it.